Hi, everyone. I just wanted to welcome you all to our new graduate student of color orientation, and welcome to UNC Charlotte as well. I'm Dr. Aura Young. I'm the Assistant Director of the Center for Graduate Life. You've probably all received an email or two from me already. So today I'm super happy to introduce Dr. Cheryl Waites Spellman, the moderator of today's panel. She's a professor here at UNC Charlotte, professor at the School of Social Work. She's also the former dean of the School of Social Work at Wayne State University. Since last September, she's been serving as the interim special assistant to the Chancellor for Diversity and Inclusion here at UNC Charlotte. And her bio is so lengthy and impressive, it was actually a challenge to just pull out some highlights for you here. So Dr. Wade Spellman is a graduate of the Harvard Institutes for Higher Education's Management and Leadership in Higher Education Institute and the Management Development Program. She's the recipient of numerous awards, is widely published, and has been a supervisor and program director at several prominent human service organizations. Her research areas include health disparities, healthy aging, long distance caregiving, intergenerational relationships, African-American families, culturally appropriate and responsive practice. And her particular area of expertise is in the areas of designing and evaluating practice applications and applied research. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Wade Spillman.
Well, thank you, Dr. Young. It's always interesting to hear other people read your bio. You feel so, it's humbling actually, but thank you. And hello, everyone. Good evening. And I'm glad to be here this evening with you to spend some time with you as you transition into a new experience for you, graduate education at UNC Charlotte. So to begin our 1 hour together, I'd like to start off by introducing you to our wonderful panel who will be sharing their experiences and answering questions this evening. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves. And I'm going to start out with, let's see, Annalise, if you could start and just tell us, give us a brief introduction.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Annalise Lara-Cuente-Espinal. I'm actually a first-year master's student in the clinical mental health counseling program, but I also am a program coordinator here on campus in the office of the provost. It's lovely to be here with you all.
Thank you. Who would like to go next? What about you, Keith?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Spellman. My name is Keith Burgess. I'm a fourth-year doctoral student in the Curriculum and Instruction program in Urban Education. It's definitely a pleasure to be here with you all this afternoon, and I look forward to sharing with you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, what about you? Let's see, Erin.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Erin Lewis. I'm a fourth-year doctoral student as well in curriculum instruction, focusing on urban education, and I'm excited to be here with you all this afternoon.
Great. Amante?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Amiante, and I am a rising second year in the clinical health psychology program here. I am in the PhD division there. Thank you.
Thank you. Shanika?
Hello, everyone. My name is Shanika Jarger-Butts, and I am a first-year public health sciences doctoral student, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. And last but not least, Landre.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Landre Oriowo, and I am a third-year student in the PhD in Curriculum and Instruction program with a concentration in mathematics education. It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. So you see, we have a wonderful panel for you this evening, and let's start out with questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat, and we'll wait for you to populate them. We'll be checking the chat periodically and try to consolidate the questions and pose it to our panel. But just to get things rolling, I'll start out with one question. for the panel, and whoever would like to respond, just jump in there. Okay, so all of you are students here at UNC Charlotte, graduate students, been here for at least a year, some 4 years. Can you tell us a little bit about why you chose UNC Charlotte and the program you're in? And anyone can answer that question.
Well, I'll go ahead. For me, I'm a non-traditional student, so I was a little bit older when I started my master's quest. And so for me, when I started, I was looking at a program that once I started, I can matriculate throughout my academic journey. So my intention was, I first started out working on my master's certificate, which wasn't quite a master's, but I knew if I completed that there was another step to that program, which was my MAT, Master's in Arts and Teaching. So I knew I wanted to do that. And I never had, being a doctoral student, was never in the never in play for me. But that was one of the outstanding things about being part of the UNC Charlotte Graduate School, is that once I got into the program and I started talking with professors and I met with those professors, they instilled into me like, hey, there's other opportunities, there's higher steps that you can continue to go on. So for me, where I started at looking at a program where I can matriculate and go all the way through, that was one of the most important things, because I do have a family here in Charlotte, and I wanted to be somewhere local where I didn't have to go out of state and have to worry about hopping online and offline. I can be here in Charlotte and be in person for class. So that was an important thing to me, being able to be somewhere where I can go through each level of the graduate school till I got to my terminal degree.
Got you. So balancing family life and your education was important to you, and you saw a way to do that at UNC Charlotte.
Yeah, I was able to find my niche at UNC Charlotte and travel through. So it was a good thing for me. Good fit.
Great. Anyone else want to respond to that question?
I'll jump in and share. I have kind of a interesting story about how I became introduced into my program. So I actually came to UNC Charlotte as a master's student right after undergraduate. And on my very first class that I took as a Master of Arts student in the English department, I had a class with a lot of different people. And on the last night of that class, one of the students in there mentioned that she was getting ready to graduate with her doctorate in urban education. And at the time I was pursuing my master's, but I was also full-time teaching in Title I schools in Charlotte. And so that intrigued me. But eventually I was like, oh, I probably will never go back and get a doctorate. The master's is A-okay for me. But then 3 years later or so, I did end up finding the program, applying back to the same program that I heard about in my very first master's class at UNC Charlotte. So ended up being the perfect program.
Great, wonderful. Anyone else?
I'll jump in. I actually looked up UNC Charlotte because a colleague of mine where I used to work had worked here 12 years ago or so. And so that's why I chose the program that I chose, because at least I knew someone who had vouched for UNC Charlotte. And then once I got here during my orientation, that's when I learned that the program I had selected was very specifically about urban education, which was amazing. So it's kind of like the gift just kept on giving. So very glad I decided to come here.
Right. Anyone else want to add to that or share their story? Okay, so let's go to the next question. In the chat, we see a question about funding, and the question is, how do you guys afford to keep going to school all the way to an MA, MS, PhD, or do you guys not even worry about hoping it will work out for yourself, especially in terms of funding, I guess?
I can jump in on that. So I, along like Keith, I'm a non-traditional student. So I started, I just completed the Master's in Public Health last semester at UNC Charlotte. So a couple years ago when I began the program, I started, it'd been years since I had been in been in higher education. So for me, I didn't go straight through. So there was some preparation prior to me beginning this graduate program. However, once I did begin the program, I did have an assistantship the entire master's program, where I taught for University College for those 2 years. And I'm currently a research assistant for a professor in public health sciences, where I'll have an assistantship for that as well, where I'm funded. So I think it's more of an opportunity. The UNC Charlotte has a lot of opportunities for you to get funding by way of assistantships. It's very important. At least for me, it's worked out where I've been in great communication with the faculty in my program and have gotten to know people well, to where they've been able to recommend me for different opportunities to get funding, even through the summer, where I've continued to work on research for other faculty members. So I think it's going to be very important for new graduate students to be present with their faculty members, be present in class, not necessarily just physically, but, you know, being engaged, so people know that you're there. And these opportunities, along with, of course, applying for them, can be offered.
Right, and getting an assistantship, how do you go about doing that? You know, to someone who's new to the graduate school experience, what are some tips for doing that? I think you mentioned one or two about being present in class, which is an important one, but what else? What other tips do you have?
Yeah, I can tag along here too. I would also recommend that students connect with older or like students who are a bit more ahead in their program, and they can help incoming grad students strategize their search, because as we know, time is very important. So it is good to know if, for example, if your program already has a spreadsheet that is full of information about certain programs that have funded the students in the past, you can definitely access that kind of information, and that can help set off your search. It's a lot of time, but you should invest time in getting outside funding. There are a lot of programs out there that can support it, and even if it starts from like $500 to a full ride, any additional money you get makes a big difference. And the more practice you have and the more money that you get in the beginning, the more likely you are to get funded for bigger grants as well.
You know, that's a good point. You know, it may be a small grant or a small opportunity, but that could lead to bigger funding resources for you. I know that, you know, in terms of my experience with graduate students, sometimes, you know, I may have a small grant but it's good experience, and then that leads to other opportunities. So that's another good suggestion. Anyone else before yeah, go ahead. Did you want to say something?
I was gonna, I'm sorry, Dr. Go ahead, Erin.
I was just gonna add, in terms of where to find some of these opportunities, if you look on the website that Aura dropped into the chat, you can go and see, you know, that we have assistantships. You can do a teaching assistantship or a research assistantship, and that would qualify you if you are a full-time graduate student for GASP funding. But you must be a full-time student. In addition to that, usually your department will inform you of any assistantships that are available, but I highly recommend that you go ahead and set up your Hire a Niner account through your banner, 49er Express, because once you set that up, you can actually filter that out to show you any on-campus employment, and that's where a lot of other assistantships are offered and posted as well.
Great, thank you. Did you want to add anything to that?
No, that's exactly, well, not exactly, but Erin, that's what I was going to say, the actual process. Thank you, Erin.
So to follow up to that, is it a good idea to have some sort of a side income during graduate school? Side job?
So for me, I teach full time because, again, I have a family. I have one daughter who actually just went, she started at our freshman year. I dropped her off at Winston-Salem State on Friday. So yes, having a full-time job was a requirement for me, but also looking for other opportunities to bring in income is essential too. But all of these come from networking opportunities. So one of the things I implore you to do is to, whatever you're majoring in, go to the conferences that they may have in your major. Go to those conferences, go out there, meet people, because there are people who have these fundings and they have these visiting fellowships. I went to the AMLE conference. I teach full time. So I went to the middle grades conference and I met the Dean of Education at the University of Vermont, and talking to her, she was there to give out fellowships at that conference. And I just happened to sit next to her and I was talking to her and ended up applying for that visiting doctoral scholarship at the University of Vermont and got it. And that was like a 1-week program I had to go to and do some workshops, and I got $1,500 for it. So a closed mouth does not get fed. You have to go ahead and speak and go out there, put yourself out there, meet people, because there are so many opportunities out there. So the biggest thing though is to make sure you go into those conferences, network, talk to your faculty, talk to the professors, and they can let you know what conferences are the must go to ones where you'll meet those people with the money.
Absolutely, a good suggestion. And the other piece that I'll add is that sometimes there are scholarships to attend those conferences. You can, as a student, so you may be able to access it, because if you apply for a scholarship, they'll partially fund, if not fully fund, your travel, so, and registration. So that's another option. Okay, I want to move on to another question here. I'm going to read it. It says, as a first-generation graduate, I have no idea what getting a master's degree looks like. I am nervous. As a Black woman, I struggle with comparisons and feeling inadequate. In fact, I find myself quite intimidated by all of you. How do you deal with it if you experience imposter syndrome?
Can I jump in here?
Yes.
This is especially interesting for me just because part of my research interest is about women in STEM and in higher education. And so that idea of feeling like an imposter is real. But I guess the first thing is you got in. So you got in, so clearly you have something that you have to offer. But also I think this whole thing is a process. I waited, I think there were like 12 years between my master's and this doctoral program. And my first day in my first class, I broke out in hives. But this is my third year. I'm starting my third year. It's like, it's new, and you are experiencing a new normal. So you're definitely not alone, because your classmates are thinking the very same thing. So if you think you're the only one who's intimidated or terrified, I promise you they are too. So make those connections, talk to your instructors, and just stay the course, and you're going to find out that you absolutely have what you need.
Wonderful, thank you. Anyone want to add to that?
I would love to add. I think it goes back to what Lanre was saying. Just know that if you're feeling it, most likely your peers are also feeling that same feeling of imposter syndrome. And I would encourage you to speak up anyway. We can do things even when we're afraid. It doesn't make them less scary, but I would encourage you to reach into your courage and speak in class, speak to your peers, speak to your faculty members, and know that just by speaking up, you're giving someone else the permission and the courage to also share their voice. You got into the program, you were selected out of all the other students who applied, you deserve to be here. And I would also add that it becomes easier the more that you put yourself out there. That's what I have noticed when I've spoken up in class, even if I felt like I messed up, or maybe I didn't say it the perfect way. It wasn't about how I necessarily, like how perfect I was in the class. It was about me sharing my perspective. And then that led to someone else sharing their their perspective and their worldview with the rest of the class, and that helped with my knowledge and with the class's knowledge. So it's all about putting yourself out there and trusting that you deserve to be where you are. And I also have a mentor who's a doctoral student on campus, and she said, if she has a quote, "If you don't cry a little bit, you're not doing it right." So, so it's okay to do things when you're scared. It's okay to cry. You deserve to still be here.
Thanks. That was great. Anyone else want to add to that or share your story?
I personally fight imposter syndrome every single day. Like every day. I started my program, like I mentioned, 2 years ago, the Master in Public Health program, and I was the oldest person in my cohort and only one of few. I think there were a handful of students of color. So it was very, very, very much something that weighed on me every single day. But what I realized, though, is that I had some experiences that I could lean into that other people did not. And those experiences literally carried me through the past couple of years. And I continue to think about that because sometimes you think that, you know, you're an oddball because one, you don't know if you have the experiences of everyone else. And but it really was helpful to me to realize that, you know, my uniqueness was something that was very much an asset that I have continued to carry with me. And secondly, I gave myself the permission, which you should as well, whoever asked that question, to admit when you don't know something. And if you don't know it, like, you're here to learn. So it's very important to speak up and speak with your professor, speak with other members of your cohort if you really don't understand something or if you need help. Because of that, I developed a study group that we were together the entire 2 years, and I felt like an old lady in the group, but it worked out great because of those two individuals that I worked with the entire time. It made the process pretty seamless. So but I had to admit that, one, that, you know, I'm not an imposter. Like someone else said, I got here, I applied, I got in like everybody else. But two, that, yeah, I don't understand it. And hey, can you please explain it to me? So that's what I would say.
Absolutely. Pull into your, or tap into your courage, I think many of you said, and remember other people are feeling some of the same feelings that you're feeling sitting in that classroom, especially the first few days, and speak up, and you know, it will get easier as you move through. Very good. And this is all of what you just shared with us. So thank you. All right, I'm going to move on to the next question. There's some interest in, or some concern about being a distant learner. So they want to know if any of you are distant learners, and how did you stay involved, get connected, take advantage of networking opportunities and other kinds of opportunities available on campus. Distance learning is very prevalent right now. I think, you know, we're going back face-to-face at a much higher level than last year, but still there are a lot of online classes, and distant learning is prevalent across the university right now this semester.
I started my matriculation through the program as a distant learner, and then from the distant learner, then I entered the MAT program, and I see somebody put a question in the chat about that MAT program. So that was me. So I'm here with the story that, yeah, it's possible, it's doable, and the program is really outstanding to be able to go from that master's certificate to go to the MAT program, and then still be able to matriculate even higher. It's kind of priceless. And so I know with the MAT, a lot of people question, well, is it worth getting a master's in North Carolina if you're going to teach, because they don't pay you for your master's in North Carolina if you're teaching? But one of the things that I had to think to myself is, I want to invest in myself, because what do I want to do after I finish with the classroom? So I want to be able to have something else to fall back on and say, hey, look at my CV, I have this master's. I have this PhD. So don't get discouraged when you look at, is it worth getting an MAT because I'm not going to get paid for it? Just think of it as a way that you are investing in yourself and what you might see and what those opportunities that might be coming for you down the line, because they'll come to you. They'll come. You might not see it in your salary, but you'll see it in opportunities when they do come to you.
Thank you. Good. Anyone else want to talk to that issue of being a distance learner and taking advantage of this opportunity to develop yourself?
I'll add, I'm not a distance learner, and I have not done distance learning since I've been a graduate student 2 times at UNC Charlotte. But the first time that I did attend UNC Charlotte as a graduate student during my master's program, I was part-time and I worked full-time. And so, you know, through that experience, seeing other full-time students and in my courses and things, that motivated me and made me want to like get more involved when I came back. But I did have a friend, a close friend, that just completed a distance education program through UNC Charlotte. And a couple of things she shared with me about getting involved was just leaning on her cohort. So, and same with us that are going face to face. A lot of us have to go hybrid at many times this year.
Yeah.
Staying in touch with your cohort. You get to know people still virtually. It doesn't seem like, if that's not your thing, it can be intimidating at first, but professors are trained to, you know, engage you all in a series of ways. And so, you know, using discussion posts to get to know your classmates, doing group projects, meeting with them on Zoom. I'm also a Graduate Life Fellow here through the Center of Graduate Life, and we hosted many events virtually last year when we were mostly in remote learning, and we plan to still have some, you know, aspects of those going on as well. And so just look out for that, just like we're having this today. Make sure you're always reading your Grad Life Weekly. You might see it. It's easy to say, I don't know, I might pass it by, but no, there's always great stuff in there. Definitely read it. There's a lot of events that are in there that are going to be a mix of in-person and virtual as well, happening on the campus.
Great, thank you. All right, I'm going to move to the next question. They'd like to know if you have any advice for students who are coming from out of state or who are coming from overseas. Any advice to share with people who are coming from out of state? I think someone is coming from Ohio. I think I saw that.
Yeah, that. I think I put that in the chat as well. But I did, when I first came to the US, I was an international student, and that's when I went to school in Kentucky. And so years later, I am now a citizen, and then I moved from Ohio to Charlotte. So transition is sort of the name of the game. And one of the most important things is to take advantage of the time that you are in your classes to get to know people, even no matter where they're from. As an international student, you know, there are organizations for international students. So that's one way to meet people from where you are, from your continent. You may or may not speak the same language, but it makes you feel a little more at home. And also, one of the things I did every time I moved is explore, find a buddy. These orientations are a wonderful way to meet people in your cohort. That's how I met the first few people I knew in the program, and we went to orientations there, and you know, we just explored. And we've stayed in touch, and I've had classes with some, and you know, you just get to meet more people. So explore, look for the places that you tend to need. If you need a specific type of store, search, explore, go visit. But you don't have to be alone when you do all that. So again, there are organizations that give you that opportunity to meet people who are like you, but also just, you know, get lost and find your way. That always worked for me.
Thank you. Anyone else want to add to that or share your experience? No out-of-state students. No, none of you. Oh,
I'm a New Yorker, so I
so
I'm definitely out of state. So like I said, but I'm not traditional, and I decided to make Charlotte my home. And once I knew Charlotte was the place that I wanted to be at, I made sure that I had residency. So this is one of the things, if you're thinking about planning or if you're planning on staying in Charlotte for a long term, and you're going to be in your prospective program for a while, try to see what you can do to get that residency. Somebody talked about affordability last time. There's a huge difference between tuition of an out-of-state person and an in-state person. So if you want to keep that affordability in check, try to see what you can do to become an in-state student. That would be my suggestion.
Your suggestion. Thank you. Anyone else?
I did originally come to Charlotte from South Carolina, but just an hour and a half away. So I was like, I don't know if I want to.
Does that count really? No, Melissa.
I know, yeah, I'm from Columbia, South Carolina originally, and knew a lot of people here, but I did it. It was an adjustment getting used to Charlotte and getting used to the university is large, and my undergrad was large as well, but I, was from the town. But a couple of things I did know is just like, again, meeting some people in your cohort. And if you are from out of state and coming in, there's a lot of great events. One of the first events I attended the first time I came was that graduate student orientation that we had. And we were able to meet with people from different graduate student organizations, which we do have. And those are just great opportunities to connect and meet with people. This is another way to connect. If you're seeing a lot of people in the chat right now, make some connections here, make some connections with some of us. We're your first step in, and then, keep it going. There's a lot of events, great events happening in the city. I see a lot of people mentioning Ohio. Yeah, Ohio's actually, from what I read before, like one of the top states that people move from. I've met several people from Ohio here, several people from New York, several people from all over the country and all over the world as well. So don't be afraid to just it's kind of scary at first, like, oh, I don't know who's going to be there. But if you are in Charlotte, definitely look for an opportunity to come gather at some event, even if it's out of your, normal activity. Just go push yourself and I'll guarantee you'll meet someone awesome.
Great, I agree. So I'm from New York originally, but I've been all over. So my question is, what do you think people will like most about coming from places like that to Charlotte? Not South Carolina, but maybe Ohio and other places overseas. What would they like about UNC Charlotte and Charlotte in general? What would you suggest, point out as one of our points of excellence or culture or charm or whatever?
Well, the first selling point for me is the weather.
Exactly.
After 16 years in Ohio with very horrible winters, the winters here are cute. So, 1 to 2 inches of snow and, everything's like emergency. And I'm like, oh, that's so precious. So the weather is absolutely amazing. But also there's so much to do here. And again, I did my grad school work at a small university. This one is large, but the city is also growing. So there are so many things that pop up and just really unique events. I celebrated Juneteenth for the first time this year because I finally knew what it meant. And there were events, stuff on Eventbrite. And I went to something called a Do-Rag Festival. Check it out next year because I will be attending again. It's very different, very curious. So Charlotte has a lot to offer, not just the weather, but experiences as well.
Thank you. And South Carolina is great too. Just very similar to North Carolina. Okay, so there are several other related questions. I think some want to know about children and how you navigate that. Maybe if you have a 12-year-old or anything, how do you navigate being a student and having children?
Oh, I can talk about this all day. I have a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old and a husband. And it takes a lot of organizing. So I would definitely say that. Like I live and die by my calendar. If it's not on the calendar, then it doesn't get done, only because I will forget. Yeah. So one thing that one piece of advice I would give for sure, especially if you have school-age children, is to literally write everything down. It sounds elementary, but it really has helped me to write everything down and stay organized, because I kind of underestimated the amount of organization it would take for me in my classes, along with like the household. And in order to stay sane, I had to write it down and be able to be able to look and say when I'm available and when I'm not available. But that's the number one thing I would say. Definitely get a planner, write it down, and stay organized.
Absolutely. Okay, another question. I'm a first-gen grad student with interest in various research topics, but I have no clue on what exactly I want to do on my research. What advice would you give me and how can I navigate this? Now, some of you in your 4th year, you've been through this. You kind of know. Some of you are struggling with that right now if you're in your 1st or 2nd year. So.
And before we move on, I just want to address the parent issue one more time, because that is a big deal. And we do, in our doctoral program, we do have a lot of single mothers, and there have been times where some of those single mothers have brought their children to class, and maybe they were of the middle school age, and we're a family at UNC Charlotte, so and the professors are family, and they have families, and they have younger children. So don't feel like you would be in a position where you couldn't bring your child on campus, and maybe sometimes your child might be next door in another room. Maybe they might be in a hallway doing their work or one of the seats in the hallway. But don't let that be a barrier that you have a child with you going after your dream and feeling like this is something you can't do because you have a child, because there are single mothers that do sometimes make that sacrifice, and they'll bring their children up to campus and they'll go after their dreams and they'll get it. They still get it. So don't let that be a barrier.
Thank you for circling back to address that. And there are resources on campus to support you in that. So, and we're continuing to try to develop new ones as well. We just need to hear from you so we'll know in what direction what we need to strengthen, so to speak. Okay, so back to the research question. How do you pick your topic? And I'm going to add to that. And then how do you connect with mentors? How do you set up those mentoring relationships?
I can address how do you pick your topic, because if you're like me, I was one of those people that had this big broad idea that could become 60 other ideas and then try to write about it in a 15 to 20 page paper, and it's impossible because it's too many ideas in one and you have to kind of narrow down. But in one of our courses, we had the opportunity to like take a step back and reflect and kind of map out where do we see ourselves in the next 5 years. Other professors pushed us through activities and just kind of reflecting on like, what were our interests, what were those things? And so I encourage you, and even some of the offering workshops from the Center for Graduate Life as well offers workshops on helping you kind of develop your research and also how to present your research as well. So I encourage everyone to kind of look for those resources and just kind of start making your own personal list, kind of jotting down and thinking about what are you most passionate about? Why are you passionate about that? And, you know, there's a series of strategies for that, you know, making kind of webs on a whiteboard or on a piece of paper and branching them out, but just kind of thinking back to like, what is it that drives you the most at the core? And then kind of branching off from there to see what speaks to you the most. And in terms of mentorship, everyone is super, like all faculty, other graduate students, everyone's super friendly. But in terms of like faculty and other staff members that maybe you want to look to as mentors, if they're holding a role that you are interested in, maybe in higher ed, just reach out, send an email anytime. I'm always nervous about like reaching out to someone via email and like, oh, this is, you know, I don't want them to feel like I'm just like asking them for something. They probably have multiple people asking them for something, but anytime I have reached out, I've been encouraged to reach out multiple times to other people and other colleagues, and anytime I have, it's always been a positive response, always great reception. And you know, people are super welcoming on campus. If you're distant, reach out to your professors or anyone, see if they know someone that maybe is focusing on a topic similar to you. Our faculty members are always happy to connect you to some of their friends or their colleagues from other universities if they don't quite follow or study exactly what you're looking to study. So just make sure that the first step is opening your mouth and just asking and reaching out. Because if you never do that, you'll never know and connect with others. And the last thing I would say is conferences. We have conferences here on campus. The Center for Graduate Life and the graduate school also hosts many conferences. Your department will likely host conferences, but there's also national conferences and international conferences. These are also great ways to find a mentor and to find folks, not just from UNC Charlotte, but all over the world that can kind of connect you and help you grow professionally.
Thank you. Very good answer. Comprehensive.
If I might suggest something as well, one of the things that worked for me in the beginning too was search for the faculty research. Like, you know, faculty members have pages and it talks about their research, but also I think some departments even show the research interests of current graduate students. And the one thing that helped for me was if you happen to be in a major or area that has a lot of writing, you know, one thing that I was told and has been very helpful is take advantage of those papers to explore your topic. So if you ever get something where it's like you get to pick the topic, use it to try things out. You're going to, you know, get some feel for the literature and in the process, like I am in a research group with Erin, and that happened because one of my classmates who had listened to one of my presentations on one of my papers said, hey, someone came to our class and she's starting this research group. And that's how I got connected with people who had very similar interests to me. So just every place that you are, every paper you write, every conversation you have, somebody's listening and someone's probably going to, you know, connect you to something that they have heard from. So the networks is so critical.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, I would just add to that, it is important to start looking into some professional organizations and seeing if you can find like a home. So I know like in my area, there's this broad American association, like the Psychological Association, but they have like their subdivisions. And then oftentimes these subdivisions, they have like mentorship programs. So you can get connected with a mentor there, and their goal, and they're very explicit about their joining this the program to serve as a mentor. So you already don't have to, you know, try to persuade them to advise you because they are already vested in. So that is one way to find a mentor. Also, it is important to know that you won't be able to find everything you need in one person. So you have to develop a network of like mentors and like advisors. So for me, I am also a mother, and I have someone who is a faculty at a UNC, and where I don't have to, but she is not part of my immediate like program. So I can talk to her about my difficulties, but know that it won't really affect how I am being perceived in the in my immediate circle. So then I also have my immediate research advisor and also other mentors who are part of this circle of like mentors who can help advise me on different things. Someone who is good at like really producing top-notch research and can help review some of my papers. So it's good to add these people with these really specific like skills in your network, and then together they can become this circle of a mentorship for you.
Wonderful. Excellent advice. And I always tell students the importance of having multiple mentors. Just as you said, it's really important. And you go to your individual mentors for different supports, you know, and different advice. So one mentor is not enough, multiple mentors. There may be someone who can help you kind of hone in on your research questions, so to speak, in your research area, and another one who could help you to access publications, you know, to get some of your work published, or some who can sponsor you for kinds of fellowships, or they're in a network where they know how to access additional funding for you. I mean, so just don't select one, look across the board. That's excellent advice. Thank you. Okay, so now you're a grad student. The question is, how involved should you get with student organizations, especially if you're in a doctoral program? How involved should you get with student orgs? And are there student organizations for grad students of color? Everyone's hesitant to answer that question. I wonder why.
I don't think we're hesitant. Everybody's just like, we all have an answer for it. So we're just like giving each other opportunities. But yeah, how involved should you be? I guess it depends on the individual and what type of, because joining those organizations is all about networking, right? So how much of a networking opportunity do you need? How much of a support mechanism do you need? Like, I couldn't have gotten through this program if I didn't have those extracurricular organizations, such like UEC, Urban Educators for Change. So that's one of the programs that we have in our department. And so you have to have a network. You have to have a support group to get you through these doctoral programs and these advanced master's programs, because it's really hard to do by yourself, because you're going to be up at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And if there's not anybody you can reach out to and talk to about that experience, it's like, who can I talk to about this? Who can I share this feeling? Who else is feeling this way? You have to have those support mechanisms that you can reach out to and talk to. And that's what you do when you join those outside organizations. So it just depends on the amount of support that you feel like you need to help you get from one semester to the next semester.
Thank you.
I'll add, there are many organizations, and I one of the things I loved about UNC Charlotte when I first came here for my master's was the fact that there were specifically graduate student organizations. And so a lot of departments have graduate student organizations. I dropped in the chat the link just to kind of explore what all options you have. You can also start your own graduate student organization if you're interested in. And there's resources and steps for that as well. But just think about your timing, maybe take it slow at first. There's a lot of opportunities to volunteer. So the Center for Graduate Life has Grad Life Ambassadors. Those are just kind of roles to support other graduate students, but also allows you to meet graduate students from all over, cross departments throughout the university, or even just kind of volunteering. You'll probably find from your department that if someone in your department or one of the branches of your college are hosting conferences, there's opportunities to volunteer. So kind of just pace yourself and start that way. And as you get to know how much time will take for the amount of work that you'll have to do as a graduate student, you can kind of prepare your schedule that way to kind of maybe build in something ever so often if you're pressed for time, but still make time to be able to do at least one thing a month or one thing every few months versus piling it all and signing up for every organization. Never recommended. Just take it slow. There's lots to do, and you can also kind of date around and kind of see what kind of options you have for getting involved.
Good advice. Anyone else?
So I actually work with graduate students for Phi Kappa Phi, which is an honor society that's available on campus. And they usually are student vice presidents within the honor society. And I would say when working with students, like if you are having like a very busy time period, or you're struggling with something with your classes, I would always recommend to reach out to your admin or to whoever the contact is for the organization that you're part of and just let them know, because we understand, at least for the faculty and staff that I've worked with on campus, we understand your job is a student first, and we want to support you in your student success. So don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it or for maybe extensions or some grace if you need it, it will be there for you.
Great, thank you for that. So I had a question about the kind of environment for graduate school. Do you think that in general, our graduate programs, you know, in terms of faculty, students and staff, have a collaborative environment, or is it more competitive?
I can speak for my program. I would say that my program is very collaborative, the public health sciences. I mean, obviously everyone wants to do well, but I found that people like to work together in order to do well. So I don't see the competition, and it could just be specifically because of the public health sciences program. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's definitely a more collaborative effort there.
Yeah, and I will speak for the health psychology program too. So having done my master's at like a tier 1 University of Minnesota, a big state university, I was exposed to a bit of a more competitive culture, and I only noticed it as being competitive when I came here, because in my cohort and within the program, any opportunity like that other students come across, either some form of like this online class where you can teach yourself some like skill or a specific funding, they're always sending it to each other, or like on Slack, hey, check this out. And I never had that really back in Minnesota. So I would say that just as it was said that, yeah, everyone wants to do well, but everyone is willing to share the resources that they are using to help, so that everyone together can do well. So.
Yeah, based on what our current discussion, that's the impression I got. It's a very collaborative environment here. And, of course, that facilitates good learning, right? Okay, so a question. What books can I read that will prepare me for the written and unwritten expectations of graduate school? Did any of you do that kind of preparation? Or did you just jump in and doing well?
Yeah. So I'm a reader and a big prepper, and I like to prepare. So before grad school, I looked at a lot of information that has helped me, and I have 3 recommendations, different sizes. So this one is The Unwritten Rule of Professional Etiquette by Ryan Sharma, and I could type them in the text.
Yeah, put it in the chat.
Yeah, and this one is great because it kind of tells you what you can expect in terms of asking for like extensions for like assignments. What is the best way to like craft your like emails when you're reaching out to advisors. So I had spent 10 years in between my master's and coming back to a school, well, more like 8, but it feels like 10. And then there's so many things that I had to get refreshed on. So these books were really helpful. The second one that I recommend is a field guide to grad school. And this is very specific. So this goes from everything from like choosing a program to crafting your CV, as well as how to network when you go to conferences, etc. But if you are crunched for time, this is the best one, Grad School Essentials. Why? Because it tells you how to read articles, like how do you critically analyze research? How do you write? How do you, like, they really walk you through how to do academic work in grad school. And if you are in like, if you are an international student, or if you are someone from a diverse background or from Haiti like I am, or anywhere, this kind of stuff is really helpful because it really walks you through what you think everyone else knows, but no one actually told you. And I have found this book to be extremely helpful. So this one is Grad School essentials, and I will type it in the chat if you press for time.
Thank you. That you were so well prepared. So you're sticking with it there. Okay. I'm gonna pick up on something you said, actually. How welcoming do you think the graduate programs at UNC Charlotte, how welcoming are they to students of color and diverse students?
So mine was interesting, and I think being in a program that is urban and math, I see the differences. And so, first of all, the urban part of the curriculum and instruction program is amazing. And, if you have a passion for just learning about the needs of urban students, then you have so many like-minded people in your classes. So supremely welcoming. I also found because the math concentration for this program is very small. I believe there were 4 people in my cohort, and it stays very small. And I currently am the only student of color in that cohort. And so what I found, and I shared this with a student who was considering coming to UNC Charlotte, was that the instructors are very supportive in whatever your interests are. And so, aside from the fact that many of the faculty do care about equitable education, so that does find its way into our courses, even in math. But but also whatever it is that you have a passion for, they are supportive. If they don't have the knowledge, they are very encouraging, and to direct you to someone who might have more of that ability than they do. But they are so encouraging of whatever your passions are. So as a student of color in a program with very few students of color, I don't feel like an outsider, because I can see how really everyone tries to support you in whatever it is that you're trying to do. So it's been good for me in that respect.
Great, thank you. And of course, I like to hear that, but and I'm sure everyone wants to hear that, and how we navigate that is important as well. So anyone else want to share in that respect?
I'll add, unless Keith, do you want to go first? I know you were unmuted.
No, I was just I was saying in the master's program, it was the professors when I was working on my master's that kind of encouraged me to go on and to pursue my PhD. And I ended up having both 2 main professors that influenced me to pursue the PhD. They were also in the doctoral program, Dr. Salas and Dr. Butler. And so when you talk about diversity and inclusion, UNC Charlotte doesn't just talk about diversity and inclusion, they really try to live it. And they live it when you look at their diversity in their faculty. And so when you have faculty members that are diverse and they're encouraging other diverse students of color to all different types of background to pursue those terminal degrees, you can see that they are nurturing, they are caring, and they are concerned about your well-being and seeing you complete and finish up and get a terminal degree. So it's very important to me.
Thank you. Did you want to say something else, Erin?
Or I just wanted to share a bit of my experience. While I am in the urban education strand of curriculum instruction, as Lanre kind of referenced, we do have a larger Black population in our strand. When I first came to UNC Charlotte, I was part of the English department in the Master of Arts in English. And I did choose that program because I did see that there was at least 1 or 2 faculty members that looked like me, and that's very rare in the discipline of English. But even with my professors that did not look like me, very welcoming, very encouraging, really motivated me to push farther with my creative thesis and all those things. There are some faculty that you may encounter that I haven't seen blatantly in my experience someone outrightly, not be welcoming to diverse students, but you might catch a little phrase or something that's like not as responsive as or culturally responsive as you want or imagine. But I would say in most of my encounters, not only just with my faculty members, but graduate assistantships I've held. I've worked at the graduate school as a GA for 2 years. I worked at the Center for Teaching and Learning and worked with faculty and other staff members. And for the most part, a lot of welcoming faces. And also it is a university. And so sometimes, you're even motivated even more so if you're a student of color to kind of go the distance, just because, folks who are more in tune with some of those things that, some of the biases or some of the kind of discrepancies in representation want to push those things as well.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I'll just pick up on something that you mentioned, both of you mentioned, and then we're going to wrap up. But yeah, UNC Charlotte is very, very committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so, we start at a point where we already have good intentions, programs, and support for faculty and staff. And our goal is to lead in this space. So you're in a good place in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And with that, I will stop, and I believe I will turn it over to Dr. Young.
Thank you, Dr. Waites Spellman. Thank you so much for moderating this panel, and thank you to the panelists for all of your thoughtful answers and advice. And thanks to all of our attendees for coming and chatting in your questions. We really hope to see you at our new graduate student reception on Saturday, the 28th. I'm putting that link in the chat box again to that. So that's at 12:30 at the Hauser Alumni Pavilions. You can come meet us in person, meet the Center for Graduate Life staff, meet the graduate school staff, meet other graduate students, eat food, everything. So it'll be a lot of fun. And then of course, we also have we have another online orientation session on Thursday at 4 o'clock. It's also at that link that I dropped in there. So, and also feel free to keep in touch with me if you have any questions, concerns, thoughts, suggestions, whatever. Keep in touch. If you have any questions that I don't know the answer to, I can put you in touch with whoever does know the answer. So have a fantastic first semester. Welcome to UNC Charlotte, and I hope to see you around. Bye. Bye.